Today on the Eye of Power podcast, it's my great pleasure to welcome Donovin Lindsay to the show. Donovan has a few different businesses. A specific one that I got to know him on was called College Knowledge, where he helps people make the decisions as to what their path should be through their educational path. And so that's specifically high school students and their parents and helping them just orient in a very complicated and rapidly changing world. And Donovan is a great person to talk to. He's very easy to talk to, very knowledgeable in these areas. And you'll see he's got some things for us to keep in mind if we're just starting off in your career, if you're changing your career, or even if you're right in the middle of your career where you've got to learn some new things, because let's face facts, most of us are in that circumstance. So without further ado, please help me welcome Donovan Lindsay to the show. Welcome to the Eye of Power podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dardick. But this podcast is not about me. It's about you and your power. It's time to claim yours. Welcome, Donovan. It's great to see you. Great to be with you today.
Likewise.
We know each other a few years now. I forget exactly how we met, maybe at some sort of chamber event or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Talking and kind of hit it off because when you started talking about what your passion is, I'm like, the world needs that. So, and specifically helping young adults, make the transition from, let's say, learning about the world to being in the world and doing in the world, perhaps. So I just want to start off and talk a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are now, and we'll take it from there. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure. So much of my story, I think, just starts back from when I was in college. I went to Penn State and I was a overly involved college student.
Overly
Probably should
involved.
have been a probably should have been a less involved in the activities and things and a little bit more focused on academics, but I definitely got through it. But so much of my involvement, I saw so much of what I could do outside of what I thought I was capable of, if that makes sense. So I went into college, wanted to major in criminal justice, wanted to be a federal air marshal. And quickly throughout my college career, after I think it was my sophomore year, where it was the peak of my involvement, where I was, I think, involved in 16 different clubs and organizations. I was involved in the executive board as an officer, and four of them had three on-campus jobs, 18 credit class load. Like I would just always, firing on all cylinders, basically, which I feel had opened my eyes to so much of what experience-wise I was capable of with the different activities I was involved in, and just kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone. That got me to look into different careers. One of the things I did right after that was I worked as a security manager up at Camelback Resort in the Poconos.
Oh,
And I
nice.
remember thinking that I would really be like kind of opening and closing doors throughout the shift. And little did I know my first shift, I think I called 911 three different times as someone was stuck in an elevator. There was a cardiac incident when someone had a hard time breathing, then a bar fight. So I just
Wow.
remember like I was there for about a year and a half and learned so much about myself and how to deal with things. And then having graduated from Penn State, I people always told me I'd work for the university one day, which to me was the furthest thing from my mind. But I also wanted to get my master's degree. And I knew that the university would pay for 75% of it. And one of my many jobs that I had as a student was in the admissions office. I got hired as an assistant director of admissions at Penn State about 2 years after graduating, and I was there for about 5.5 years. And with that, I was able to mentor those so many students. So a lot of the times when you work in college admissions, you're dealing with students that are coming in. You're not dealing with the current students that are there.
Right.
Whereas I was able to advise three of the some of the largest clubs on campus when I worked at Penn State. So for me, that mentoring aspect, I saw myself in their shoes and how much I got out of it. So for me, I was always thinking about outside of just the club and what we're doing, how can I help them overcome these obstacles of just life, and how can I integrate that into what I'm teaching them as members of of the clubs that I was advising.
Let's keep going. How you got to where you are now then.
Yeah. So at one point, I remember thinking to myself, what else could I potentially be doing to help these students out? So I would offer like different mentoring workshops where maybe I'm helping them with interview skills or resume writing or those types of things. And those are the things I found a lot of passion in doing, even though they were way outside of what I was doing in my role in admissions. But I'd get calls and emails like, "Hey, oh my gosh, years later, that one time you did this or did this really helped me because now these little things are, so much easier that I'm going through." So I was at Penn State for about 5.5 years. During the pandemic, I really began to realize because I was an out-of-state recruiter at Penn State, so I was in many states, many cities recruiting. And I began to realize how much of a disconnect there was between what students and their families knew, what on the other side of the desk when they were applying to colleges, what us on the admission side was looking for. Specifically, I was on Zoom one day talking with a prospective student to the university and his sister, and they were just completely lost. And I remember from that one interaction, I thought to myself, what could I potentially do to be able to help these people go through that search and just alleviate some of that stress. So I actually started a business called College Knowledge, which I've been running now for about 3.5 years. Became a nonprofit about a year and a half ago. But with that, I help students and their families navigate their college search. So from beginning, really just thinking about you want to go to college to potentially down the road to looking at applying and things like that and everything in between, college essays, college interviews. But if I'm able, I feel like if I have the knowledge or people around me have the knowledge to just be able to move those obstacles out of people's way, why not? Why not use that knowledge and do something good with it? I left Penn State. I've been doing corporate recruiting now for the last couple years. And with that experience, almost similar to my admissions experience, that taught me on the other side of the desk what recruiters are looking for and what the hiring managers are looking for. So I started another business called Premier Career. And with that, I help people navigate their resumes, their cover letters, creating a LinkedIn profile, Indeed account, doing mock interviews, because these are all little things that help that bigger picture. But so many people, they don't know the average time it takes someone like me, a recruiter, to look at your resume is 6 seconds, and you're going to spend hours on your resume. And I'm looking at it, I tell people I look at it like a dating app almost. Like I'm quickly swiping left and right on what I know is going to work, or what I like. So I started that, and I'll go out to do in-person sessions or sometimes just something virtual. I have another business called the Guy Organization, and Guy is my middle name, so it's a kind of a play on words there. But with that, I go out and I do leadership talks because my master's is in psychology of leadership, primarily focusing on um, I get a lot of energy when I'm talking with younger people, so like high school and then college age students, and then motivational speaking, and then the nonprofit organization College Knowledge Foundation. So everything I do is kind of separate, but also very similar. And my passion is so much just sharing my knowledge and how can I really help other people, overcome obstacles that are in the way to get to that next step.
Well, I think people listening to that story can understand why I was very impressed and wanted to get to know you better as soon as we met, really.
Sure.
So that's fantastic path that you're on, Donovan. I definitely give you a tip of the hat for that.
Thank you.
And it's so needed. One of the things I was thinking about as you laid all that out is, some people come into this world and they know what it is that they want to do. I have my daughter. It was like that. She knew she wanted to be a vet. Specifically, she wanted to take care of birds. She knew it when she was like 4 and 5 years old, and she
Uh-huh.
just got her white coat. She's halfway through her vet school, and that's exactly what she's doing.
Nice.
And I'd say there's a few amount of people that fall in that category, but that's definitely more the exception than the rule. Most
Yeah.
of us are trying to figure stuff out and figure out what we like and what we don't. My son was more on that side of it where he didn't really know. And to have somebody who's been around and that has that professional expertise that you have as a sounding board is extremely valuable. I want to go into the college stage for a second
Hmm.
because the nature of education, I think, is a moving target in
Hmm.
today's world. And there's lots of stories about both the pros and the cons of the college experience. And it does provide a unique time in our lives where we get to maybe explore, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So we
Correct.
can go to college in whatever field we suspect we might be into and just explore and learn and play and develop. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And then the other kind of way that people frame college is I want to be a this, so I have to study that. And
Sure.
what's your view of that? Those maybe if we call them two different approaches or camps, what's your view of somebody who might be either in one or the other, or maybe not sure, trying to decide how to approach the overall picture of their next stage of life coming out of high school?
Yeah, I think when I think about college, I think of education. And when I think of education, education comes in so many different forms. Probably 90% of the potentially thousands of presentations I gave over the course of my time at Penn State, whether that being on campus or off campus in different states and different cities, I talk about how when you think of education, most people immediately think of the classroom setting. Whereas when you think of a high school student, they're going to spend 7.5 hours a day in a classroom. Whereas in college, they're spending maybe 3, 4 hours a day at most in the classroom, and they may not even have class every single day. So
Right.
the amount of time that they're in the classroom is drastically less. The things that you're learning, you're going to learn way more about yourself and your environment and how to interact. You're going to learn way more in college outside of the classroom than you ever will inside the classroom. So in a way, it's almost like it's another structured environment because you've been in school all your life. If you're the traditionally age high school student coming in right into college after after right after you graduate from high school, but you've been in school all your life, so it's just another kind of step, but you're meeting people that you may not have met before because you may be going away to school. So if you've been in the same area for all your life for 13 years, you've seen the same people, in your classes and things like that. Whereas college gives you a very different perspective because you've got teachers and professors from all over the place. You've got students from all over the place. Maybe you're going to study abroad. So it definitely gives you a lot of, an education, but it's outside the classroom. And then you have the other side where, you're going to college specifically for a very specific degree, which is good. But what I tell students all the time, think about the realm of things that you're interested in because I think the statistic now is like 80% of college students will change their minds once and about 52% will change their minds twice while they're in school. So
Wow.
it's okay. It's okay to change your mind. And I think that there's an unnecessary pressure that students feel and even their parents they give them an unnecessary pressure where you have to know what you want to do. Where I remember having a mother come into my office. I felt like I oftentimes got the more difficult cases, but over the summer, I remember having a mother in my office that some of the staff had wanted me to talk to because her daughter was on campus in the summertime scheduling her classes. And the mom was basically in tears that she was so stressed out for her daughter that she was going to change her mind, not really know what she wants to do, spend all this money. And I turned my screen around. She was on the other side of my desk. I remember turning my screen around. I had seen something on Facebook a couple months prior that said, "We expect high school students in May or June before they graduate." Who are still raising their hand in their classroom to get permission to leave the classroom and go to the bathroom. We expect them 2 or 3 months later to pick a degree or major and know what they want to do for the rest of their lives. I'm like, it's impossible. If they change their mind, it's good that they're changing their mind because they're begin to really learn this is for me, this isn't for me. There's so many things that go into college, not just again academically, but the human skills that you learn, the logistical skills are just about thinking and conceptualizing and making decisions on your own because that safety net of mom or dad it's completely gone. And it's like almost like sink or swim during that first semester where it's like, oh wow, now I have to figure out what I'm going to eat, or I have to do my own laundry. Like it's just life that you also learn. I mean, you can learn that in other areas and scenarios, but for so many people, they still need almost that structuredness after the fact, I feel, because, there's been, parents that have done so much for them where if they just kind of went out, they'd be even more lost.
I'm laughing because my personal experience. Now, this was a long time ago. Uh, I'm an old guy, but this is before cell phones, when long distance calls cost a lot of money, so you couldn't just call home. I went, not a close drive. I was in central Pennsylvania, and I went to school in Boston, and
Hmm.
that was far enough away to feel like it might as well have been halfway around the world. And when I went to school, I was 17, and I'll say a young 17 in terms of my emotional and physical development. And
Yeah.
it was too big of an ask for me, really. And I struggled, and I I ended up taking actually I took a year off from there to because I realized I'm just not ready for this. And then once
Yeah.
I took a year off, went back after that year, worked and felt what the real world was like a bit, went back, and I was much better equipped after, taking that gap year. So I share that because I could totally relate. I got there and it was like I was meeting people, kind of people I've never met before.
Yeah.
Didn't know how to orient myself. I thought I was kind of a big shot kind of guy type of thing. And you get in this and like, you're no longer, necessarily one of the smarter people. There's people that are smarter than you left and right. It's
Uh-huh.
like,
For sure.
it's one of these things that and with more cosmopolitan experience, people that come out of, say, a prep school versus a public school have a completely different,
Correct.
viewpoint of the whole thing and their readiness level,
It's
and
very eye-opening.
it really is. Yeah, it's this acclimation aspect of things that's not just about the academics. It's really about, who you are as a person, how you conduct yourself, and life skills, and all the rest of it. And I
Yeah.
think I think one of the things I'd take away from what you shared there, Donovan, is um, it's probably pretty good for parents not to do everything for their kids, right? As a parent, you want to take care of your kids, but really what you want to do is teach them to take care of themselves. So you want them to do everything they can do for themselves. You want them to do it. And that's way more than you think, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, specifically, there's so many instances when you said that are running through my head because when someone would come into the admissions office, you could often tell because we'd have like a folder, a packet made up with their name on it. We'd go to hand it to the student, and the mom or dad would take it,
Yeah.
and they'd be the so like immediately it was like
Time
okay.
out. Time out here.
Or during the
You're
admissions
not gonna be here,
presentation.
right?
Yeah,
You're
like
not
the
coming
admissions
with, you're not gonna
presentation. The parents would be asking all the questions, or like you could just see the kid kind of slouched in their seat because they just knew that it was it was the parents' show and not really the student. So,
So
and in
did you
those
say
instances, a
something
lot of the
during that?
times,
Would you say something in those moments?
no, I mean it'd be a very large audience, so usually I'm not
Okay.
like pointing or anything out. But for me, I'd have a field day with it because when I knew the parent was doing that, I wouldn't even look at them. I would focus specifically on the student, and I could tell the parents at times would be annoyed because I wasn't really listening or like kind of not like disrespectfully ignoring them, but like in a way tuning them out and be like, okay, now what do you think? And pointing like to their student or even like a one-on-one thing in my office. Like I could tell where the parent's like, oh, well, my daughter wants to do business. And then I can see like a little bit of an eye roll. And I'm like, so what are you interested in? Like, what interests you exactly in business? Like, what do you want to do? And then all of a sudden it's like, she's interested in computers or it's criminal justice or it's
Right.
psychology. And then, so yeah, there is so much of that where the parents, you need to back off at times. And I know it's hard, but I would see so frequently the helicopter parents, and I would feel at times bad for the student because they wouldn't know how to do so much when the student is on campus for that first semester. And I knew parents that would try to stay once they moved their kid in, they would try to stay way too long. Not just saying like when they move in, like they'd try to stay an hour or two, like I could tell you stories where parents are like stayed in the residence hall with the student like the first night. Like, and I'm not a parent, so like, but I also feel like I would be like, okay, it's their show now. I need to trust myself that I've prepared them enough.
So that might be something to highlight a little bit in terms of, what helps us with our agency and our personal power, just right out of the gate. If you feel like you're doing, if you feel like you have to, or it's your job to do everything for somebody, then that is going to take away a bit of their agency in the sense that they either atrophy or they don't build the skill to be able to do it, or they have the expectation that they shouldn't have to, which it might be even worse. So,
So much of that, yeah. I think so often there more so now, I would say, than before. I'm seeing more and more where the student doesn't feel like so many things are that they have to do or should be doing. Like that expectation, they in their minds, they're not seeing it. And I don't know if that's because of so much technology and they're so used to just things, being quicker and at their fingertips, where if things take time, they're just like, well, someone else can do that. Well, it's like, no, things at times take time. And, you have to put that work in to do it because with anything, with growing anything, whether that be yourself or something that you're doing or trying to grow, you have to put the time in. You get out of it what you put into it.
Our society, I'd say the modern world in general, is very enamored with our accomplishments in the sense that we think we have the solutions for everything and that everything should be easy. And so, easy, new, improved, everything should be easy. And it's like,
Yeah.
when did easy get like nothing? Nothing is easy. First of all, we know that, right? I mean, because if you take the easy way, life gets very hard very fast. So
Correct.
so nothing is actually easy. So the question is it worth it or not? That's the question that people should be, considering.
Hmm.
And if we consider that at age 16 and 17 and 18, that's way better than finally getting it to 26, 27, 28, or worse, 36, 37, 38.
Yeah. I would pull
We,
students aside at times and I would tell them how impressed I was when they were in college of their initiative that they would take with things. And I would even tell high school students that when they would call. If I got an email from a high school student that I could tell, even though it was coming from the email address to the student, but was written by the parent, like if I got an actual email from the student, I can tell it was written by them and I actually met them in person or they're just on the phone. I would sometimes, let them know that, like, I'm glad you're the one calling because I could see you being very successful when you're here because you're the one taking the steps to do this. And I even appreciate it when I could hear the parent kind of whispering in the back, like, make sure you ask this. Like they were kind of coaching them, not on the phone doing everything, but like, hey, make sure you ask this. Or, I mean, nowadays, I mean, I hire interns and just having been in recruiting for a while, I can see a huge disconnect with interviews and people just not wanting to pick up the phone and talk to people. It's all, well, I can send an email, I can send a text. And I'm like, dial the number and talk to the person. That's a huge skill that I feel is just the those human skills, being able to communicate with people and having the emotional intelligence to read a room or read people and know when to say things, when not to say things. With interviews and just picking up a phone and calling people with the younger generation, that's something that I feel they should just kind of be pushed to do because to get a job, to make a business deal, to do anything, whether you want to go to college, whether you're just getting going through a job interview, whether you are trying to start your own business, being an entrepreneur, it's you got to talk to people. And I feel that that's something that communication aspect is more and more lacking.
Yeah, I mean the one of the major currencies of life is relationships. I mean, when people are on their deathbed, they're not worried about their accounts and their possessions. They're worried about the relationships they did or didn't have, right? I mean,
Correct. Yeah.
that's the number one thing. So let's make the number one thing the number one thing. Before we go into that, though, I want to get back to something else, which is the dynamic of education itself as a proposition. It used to be that we wanted to be educated so that we had a well-rounded view of things. And a classic education included the basic building blocks of our rationality, our ability to think, our ability to learn.
Hmm.
It seems like we've drifted away from that. I mean, it's not gone, of course, but it seems like the focus has gone off center as we try to get towards either a profession, like I only need to know what this is, or I only need something that's going to have an immediate ROI, or I'll never need to know that, so I don't have to pay attention to it. These sorts of beliefs. And the truth of the matter is, the more you understand about the world and all its aspects, the better off you are, no matter what your situation is.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of not only are we having the atrophy in the interpersonal, but we also seem to be having a little bit of atrophy on the intrapersonal inside of our heads. What's your view of that, Donovan?
So I know when I would talk to students about interest when it comes to like their majors, I would say to get an idea of the type of field that you want to be into or get into because like I think about when I graduated from when I started college to when I graduated college, marketing and like social media for companies wasn't nearly as big. But like now, if you really want to grow a company, it's almost impossible to do that if you're not on social any type of social media platform.
Yeah.
So I would tell students to really look at the realm of things because I remember from working in college admissions, we get emails every year. Here are the majors that we're discontinuing. Here are the majors that we're adding. Because so often the world's changing, different fields are changing where that degree that you could have gotten 10 years ago doesn't even exist anymore. Like there's so many different things out there. Like I remember my bachelor's degree being in criminal justice. My professors would always tell us try to look into cybercrime or cybersecurity because that so much of crime, because technology is on the boom, so much of crime is going to be on the computer. It's going to be cyber. It's going to be on your phone. It's going to be on a tablet. So they were saying to look into that. So I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
interested in criminal justice, but look into these aspects of this. I remember being an orientation leader. We showed the incoming class a video, and the video basically talked about how most of what you learn your first year in college will be completely out of date when you graduate your fourth year in college. So like things are just rapidly changing, and it's like you have to stay up to date. You have to also look not just not just at look at point one, but point one A and point B and point one B because there's so many other things that surround that you need to know. Because if that one thing goes away or it's kind of irrelevant, how can you pull from your knowledge and experiences that looking at more of a 360 view of things to really be able to continue with what you're doing? But so often, it's the mindset of a one track mindset where you think this is just as going to carry you, but well, you've got AI now. What can AI help you with? You've got things that can produce videos. I mean, there's so many things that are coming up where in many professions, things are just changing where you have to adapt and your skill set has to change or you're going to be stuck and people are going to surpass you quicker than you can imagine if you're not staying up to date and if you're not just curious.
And now it's not I mean, as you just mentioned, that it's not just the plight of the people going into their educational track. I don't care who you are, you're facing this as a thing because all careers are shifting with the.
Hmm.
I mean, I took a AI mastery course, and the things they were teaching, it was a 6 month long thing, and the things they were teaching in the beginning of the course were obsolete before the end of the course. So
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
it's so the pace of and that the things meaning like the specific like like we were learning how to do things that you no longer had to do because by the end you could just either tell the AI to do it for you or there was a product that made that whole
Yeah,
protocol totally unnecessary or it was more
it
of those
happens quick.
yeah. So you'd learn you learn these strings of putting, pieces together, and it's like, okay, you don't have to do that anymore. All you have to do is say, I want it to do this, and then it'll just do it. So
But you
it's in
have
a
to be
way,
able to adapt.
it's getting easier, but we need orientation, right? The tools are only as good as the person, the
Yes.
creator, the creative force that's using the tool is really the thing. The tool is just the tool. So we need that orientation aspect of how does this tool help us get this value creation, whatever that might be, to
Hmm.
happen? And I still think we need the human side of it, and that's not going to really go
Yes.
away. It doesn't seem like to me. What's your
Yeah, I
view
mean,
on
I hope not,
that?
because
Well,
there's so much of a benefit to that.
exactly. I mean, that we talked about that's the currency. My point through that whole thing is that we all are in the learning business now and the changing business now. You're gonna have to learn and grow and change. I don't if you're gonna
Yeah, you
remain
have to.
employable for much longer.
Yeah, to
In
remain
most
relevant, you have to,
yeah, in most circumstances. I mean, there's maybe some, but most anything is gonna that can be automated will be automated within a fairly short time period, right?
for sure.
So but you said something else also that I've seen repeated multiple times, which is the fastest growing jobs in a few years don't exist right now.
Correct. Yeah,
So,
and that
so
I
you
mean,
don't have to have
it's
a job
scary.
in mind, right? You don't have to have a job in mind. What you have to have is an orientation, a viewpoint of what it is that you care about, right?
Yeah. Because I think about the amount of people that I know who are like social media managers, where they manage all of the different social media platforms and accounts for all these different companies. And I think about again when I was before I graduated college, a little over 10 years ago, that wasn't really on the rise. You had some people like, all right, I could use this or use this, and we'll post things and we'll make a calendar for posting. But like those are full-time teams and positions now within companies where that just didn't exist before. So, but you got to go where your customers are. You got to go where people are. You have to again, you have to stay relevant, and it's an ever growing and changing changing dynamic in space, which is why, like you were saying, the networks that you are the networking and connections that you make are huge. Because how do I do this? Oh, this person may know someone. I'm going to text this person because I know that they know this. But you have to get out there, and you have to, again, you have to stay relevant within work, but then also I feel like within your circles and your communities, because you want to stay relevant within, that the groups that you belong to also. So they keep you
Yeah.
around.
It's funny. I just earlier today I had a fantastic video chat with a friend of mine from college. I hadn't talked to him since college, so we're talking 40 years. And
Wow.
yeah, and I just made up my mind basically because it occurred to me, you know, all these people that I think about and that I've had lost contact with, why not just reach out and see how they're doing and reconnect? And what a great experience that was. Oh my gosh. And fortunately it was a wonderful experience here because he's had a fantastic 40 years and we were sharing how proud we are of our kids and
Yeah.
professional paths have been very interesting and there may be some synergies there, who knows. And it's the kind of thing that you have these shared experiences with people, and if you don't nurture it, if you don't pay attention and give it energy, it just goes, and then it's kind of gone. But it's never too late to rekindle. If there was something there, you can go back, and I think it's a good habit to go back through. It's like who haven't you talked to in 5 years or 10 years or
Hmm.
20 years, and just reach out. And you don't have to do
Yeah.
everybody. You can just do one a month or something like that. It's
Especially when I was in college and when I worked with a lot of students, I would take a lot of pictures because I remember in college thinking about those memories, and I'd be like,
I
oh,
had.
I remember that event, or I remember this. So, in my phone, I get like notifications. This happened X amount of years ago on this date. And every time that happens, for the most part, I'll take a screenshot and I'll send it to that person. And I was like, hey, do you remember this? And that usually gets us into a pretty healthy conversation, and just a recap of quickly what we're doing. Maybe we just text that day or cut for a couple days after. But for me, that's one of the ways that for years now I've stayed in contact with people that I don't often see, or they live across the world or across the country. I'll just quickly send a text and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I remember that. I can't believe that was either a year ago or 15 years ago." So for me, that's one of the ways that I really stay in contact with so many people, is they'll get a picture from me every now and then from something that's in my camera roll.
Over the past 20 years, that's a lot easier to do because everybody's got
Yeah.
a camera in their pocket. You know, I don't know that I took a single picture during my college years. I don't know that I took a single one. Because because first of all, you don't have a cell phone.
Hmm.
Secondly, you're either a photographer or you're not. And if you're not, you don't have a camera.
Correct. Yeah.
you know, yeah,
Makes
there were
sense.
there were instant cameras and stuff like that, but I didn't think about that or worry about that or anything like that. It was a
Yeah.
total. So it's kind of
Different
a
time.
different world in that sense. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. But that's really good advice, Donovan, because we do have those memories. And I'm not saying to live in the past. What I'm saying is there's no substitute for shared experience. I guess that's really kind of the thing, right? And you're building it. So when you're starting out in college, I like that you shared that because when you're starting off and you're going on to college, you're starting a new job, whatever the starting is,
Hmm.
the idea of playing and exploring and discovering and capturing, and you'll look back at them and you'll remember the good things, and most of the bad things you won't remember so much. And so that means it's really nice to visit back there because it's almost like a reliving in a almost better way in a sense.
Yeah, and one of the things too, when yeah, I do that too. So when I do reach out to people, it's not a lot of the times when people are reaching out, usually, so if you haven't talked to them, and especially in a while, usually they need something or they want something, where
Yeah, I mean that
so
can be.
much of the relationship that I've developed I just reach out because I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about you, or a TV show or someplace I went. Like anytime I'm doing something that reminds me of someone, I'm very quick to pick up my phone and it's like, hey, I'm here, or I'm doing this, or I just saw this episode of this. So you don't have the expectation of, oh, so and so is texting me again. They probably want something. It's like, oh, it's Donovan. He's probably just catching up, or something just sparked in his head and he's just checking in. So being able to keep in contact with people and not just communicate with people, have a more authentic, an authentic relationship.
I think that's what's good about the suggestion you gave about, you find a picture and you share that picture. You're not asking
Yeah.
anything of somebody, you're giving them something. You're giving them the gift of that memory.
Yeah.
I think that's good in sales in general, rather than call asking people for things, you're really giving. You're really saying,
Hmm.
"Hey, if you're in this situation, you might need to know this here."
Correct.
That kind of thing. Yeah. Relationship obviously is important. Being authentic and having autonomy, those are key elements.
Hmm.
All of these things are key elements. Are there other key elements that you either see or don't see that will aid and abet a person's path through, their journey in the younger part of
Yeah.
their years?
I feel like so much because so many people are, they're using technology, they can get a really good starting point, but then have no idea how to continue.
Okay.
And I think partially, relationships, that's huge, being able to just do that outreach, but also just being comfortable during that outreach, or just becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable to kind of foster that growth. Because I was at a networking event, and when I go to a networking event, I love to pick out and connect with the people that are kind of sitting off to the side. And I feel like I oftentimes have better conversations with them because they're so like for people who don't feel as comfortable in that space, the amount of steps and like mentally like what they have to go through to get there is usually a lot more than for someone like me or potentially someone like you, just like, oh, I'm going to go to this networking event, I'm going to meet a couple, a bunch of people and exchange some business cards or see some people that I've seen before. But I feel like I have so much better and in-depth conversations when I pick out people at times that are there but like afraid to go into the crowd, or afraid to go and approach someone. They're looking for someone almost like me to come and approach them. So just this week, I attended a networking event where I did that, and I think every single one of them, I got a communication from within probably 48 hours of that event. Like, oh my gosh, hey, we had such a great connection, and there was it was nice, but like they were there, but also then needed a little bit of a push or that help. And in your environment, at times, if you can get that or just find a resource, such as what I do with college knowledge. So I know students want to do it, but it's like I know they know what the beginning and ending, but they don't know the middle. With the career aspect of things, I know they know the beginning. I know I need to apply, I need to do a resume, but the middle part of that to getting the job, there's a little bit of a disconnect. So there's so many things, and at times people know and they can figure out how to get started and they know where they want to go, but they don't know how to get there. And being able to have the resources and people within your circle or people that you've met at some point in time that you can, kind of rely on, I feel like is huge because we don't all know it. But so much of the time, we're going to have to, that reliance is going to be on someone else to kind of help push us through, or just give us, a little bit of a boost or a little bit of help.
Reading the room, pay attention to where people are,
Yeah.
looking for the people that are perhaps not engaged. At the very minimum, they are at least not talking to somebody else you have to interrupt. So,
Yeah.
that's, but some of that, I guess that's maybe a technique, but I get the sense that that's also you as a person. You're kind of like that. I mean, there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I can recognize that. And at times I feel, people aren't able to recognize that. But just from experience, being able to recognize that, I know has paid, dividends for me, but then that other person. Because for me, if I'm able to help that person, or I see, that great email or text or something after the fact, and then they then got connected with other people because I'll bring someone else over into the circle, and then I kind of, get out of there so they can begin to connect. So for me, that's something that I think naturally do. But for people who that's not natural for, just something to keep in mind.
A great conversation is such a gift. It really is. I mean, you go to these things, and I enjoy it because I do get in great conversations, and I think the authenticity piece of it, the fact that you're not really like some people are going there trying to get something. It's the same thing as you were saying earlier. If you're trying every time you call somebody, you're asking for something, versus
Mhm.
just actually wanting to know them and having a authentic curiosity and a sense of play and discovery and exploration as it relates to other people. I think that's a success habit in a way because
Yeah.
that can potentially be a really big gift that you give somebody. Think about that. They're sitting there, they see everybody else basically looking like they're in their element and they're feeling uncomfortable. They're sort of sitting there. And then you come over and you spark up a fantastic conversation. It's not a little bit of a difference in their experience. It's a night and day difference in their experience, uh, and their readiness to do it again. And it's not these things, it's sort of what you're saying earlier about the little things.
Hmm.
Little things are not so little in the end. Sometimes in the
No.
final analysis.
I think back to, I mean, now having been in many different instances, especially in recruiting, where like I know just relationships and communication is huge, whether that be on the college side where I did it in admissions, or whether now doing it for companies. I think back to like in high school, what I could have done differently with that one kid that was also sitting by themselves, or in college, that one
Yeah.
person that was, so I think about those instances, and I try to just include people in, because I'm like, all you really need at times is that one domino to fall. And if I can be that first and one domino in my mind, I'm like, I know there's so many others that can fall after that. So usually it's like me pulling them in, and then it's like, okay, you're in now. Now, okay, now you get this. Now go kind of go around and do that.
I'm laughing because I've had good experience on this. I had one bad experience on this.
Hmm.
It's funny. It was in seventh grade. There was a new kid who was kind of a frail, nerdy sort of guy. He was eating by himself, and I was kind of took it upon myself to invite him into the crew. And within a short time, he kind of had the crew turned against me. So so
Oh,
so I got kicked out of the crew as a result of bringing this guy into the crew. At
sure.
least that was my perception of it.
Yeah.
That's it's a 7-year-old, I mean, seventh grade kid. So my perception, I'm sure, is not reality. It's just my perception. But that's what it looked like from my viewpoint. I guess after that, I might have been like a little bit more reluctant
To do it. Yeah.
to do that. I just say that because it's sort of funny in retrospect. Matter of fact, more often when I recall that memory, seventh grade is that's rite of passage. That's when you're sort of starting to get into puberty starting to set in, but it's
Those are
not
tough
setting on
years.
everybody. And so, you're trying to find your pecking order, in the crew, right? And all this kind of stuff. And I remember when I was sort of on the outs with this crew, we were at a recess and I was wearing good shoes that day. So you couldn't go out it was a bad weather day. So I couldn't go onto the gym floor. I had to sit in the stands. They were sitting above me. At this time, I'm the oldest of four boys. I was fairly physically aggressive.
Hmm.
None of them would want to really get in a fight with me. So they
Hmm.
got one of the bigger kids in the class to do their dirty work for them. They had him sit behind me and he's bugging me. He's like hitting me in the head. He
Uh,
poked me in the neck with a pencil. And I didn't want to get in a fight, but finally he did one thing too far and I got up, he got up, and I just reared back and with everything I had, just just swung as hard as I could, hit
yeah.
him. He goes flying back. Well, so here's what happened. So there's a teacher on duty, comes over, picks him up out of the stands, throws him against a nearby wall, and says, "You're going to the principal's office." And then, yeah, I threw the first punch. But he saw the whole thing happening and saw what happened.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So after that, the the crew wanted me back and we didn't have any problems after that day. So it's
Wow.
funny how things happen like that, but that's little kids. Unfortunately, when you get to be adults, I always thought that it would be different as an adult, and guess what? It's different, yes, but it's not that different.
It's not that different. Yeah, it's not. It's I mean, so many students that I've worked with over time, they're like, yeah, I work with this person and they're so much older, but they're doing this or doing this. I thought, in high school, I was like, people just get older. Not all the times would do those types of things change.
They don't
Uh,
necessarily mature.
they don't mature, they just get older.
Yeah, and I mean we do in some ways. It's not a, there's multiple fronts here that people are
Yeah,
moving. So just to kind of bring everything together, we threw a few bunch of stuff out there. I very much appreciate it, Donovan. I was going to ask you about specifically college knowledge, but perhaps any of the concerns that you have, the businesses that you have going. What are the kinds of people that should really know who you are and perhaps be
sure.
well suited to kind of take advantage of what you offer?
So with college knowledge specifically, I would say any students looking to go to school, doesn't have to just be undergraduate, potentially graduate school, law school, medical school. I mean, I have a vast network of people that I know that I've met over the years that can help many students out with many different areas. So their parents, high schools, counselors, nonprofit organizations we like to partner with, anywhere where there's a need to figure out that college journey and really help students with that. And then
Yeah.
I'd also say on the other side of that, careers. Anyone looking to change a career, to optimize their resume, optimize their LinkedIn profile, looking for networking tips, job searching tips, those types of things also. And then anyone looking for a little bit of motivation or me to come and talk to a group about leadership or just offer very varying perspectives on things. Those are conversations that, really energize me.
Well, I tell you, I think anybody who is in any of those circumstances would be well served and well advised to take you up on that offer. So,
I
Donovan, thanks
appreciate it.
so much, man. Very
I
much.
appreciate you having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I always enjoy talking to you every time we get the chance to. And so
Likewise.
I knew this would be no different. So, appreciate you, and best in everything you do. And we'll take it from there, huh?
Thanks so much. I'll talk to you later, Tom.
Donovan, thanks for being with me. I very much appreciate the knowledge you dropped on us today. I really like the idea of that you shared with the little things, and it is the details that matter. And the other thing I kind of take from the overall conversation that we had there was you mentioned the authenticity aspect of it, but what gets in the way of that? We didn't really talk about that, but I was thinking it's when we are too focused on sort of the outcomes of things, or our fears are getting maybe the better of us, where we're worried about getting this or missing out on that, or if this, then this bad thing might happen. And that can take us away from just the natural highest moments of being in the present moment, engaged with somebody to understand better what their journey is and learning from them and being connected to them through whatever that intersection looks like. And I think you're a great example, Donovan, speaking to you, a great example of somebody who really gets that deep down in your bones. And for that reason, that really increases the value that you're able to deliver to people. And I think we can all be inspired by that. So thanks again, Donovan, for sharing what you did about all those various aspects of starting out in life and figuring out our paths and making some of those crucial decisions, and everything all at once when we're first starting like that can be very daunting. So to have a little bit of help in that process makes a ton of sense. I think that's super valuable. Thank you so much for being with us today on the iPower podcast. This has been the Eye of Power podcast with Tom Dardick. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd also like to thank my brother Scott Dardick for the music and his music production. If you'd like to reach me, simply email Tom at dardickcommunications.com.